Welcome to Discover Energy Work. I'm your host, Richard Wiggs, and today I'm with Hofan, and I'm really excited to be with Hofan. I'll give you a bit of an intro, although I expect she should probably improve my intro. But Hofan, I met her through Washan, a very kind, amazing, I don't want to say like saintly man. He's just amazing. Don't you think? And Hofan, yeah, of course, everyone. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we build up our put our people on pedestals. But Hofan is a Wu style Tai Chi teacher, so she's a Sifu in Hong Kong. She is a heart imagery teacher, which I think I'd like to know exactly what heart imagery is, and she does hands-on healing. So, like, I'm thinking. I said to her, I said, why didn't I meet you when I was in Hong Kong? I'm really disappointed. And I'm not disappointed. I'm thrilled that I finally met you. But isn't it so funny? I think we're literally living like 100 meters, 200 meters away from each other in Hong Kong. But it's incredible. So how are you doing? Welcome.
I'm doing really well, Richard. Thank you for inviting me to this podcast. It's very exciting.
Brilliant. So, the podcast is really about people's personal journeys, and it's called Discover Energy Work. And what is energy? I mean, like everything's energy. So it's like discover anything could be, but of course it's not, because there's some sort of change that we experience of perception or orientation in life that, it's not just about these material, physical things. There's something else. And do you describe yourself as a Taoist? Tao, you follow the Tao.
The Tao that can be spoken is not the Tao, right?
Exactly. Yeah, so that's why he called it the Tao, because he said, well, there is no other word, so I've got to call it something. it's like he was a bit... Yeah, in that way, he sort of gave up, didn't he? So
I give up. I really do in that sense. But I do feel there is a sense of spirit, whatever you call it. I don't think the name is very important. And it comes in many forms that we know and we encounter. And I've been lucky, I think. And I think I'm quite Taoist in the sense that I feel like Taoists are quite connected to nature. And I feel like nature has been a big part of my life and has led me to these incredible openings through, I've been to many places just because I've been attracted to, I find it a beautiful natural place. But today, what I wanted to share really were a couple of my, you can call spiritual openings, or some experiences I've had that have really moved me and I think have become very strong reference points to my life. I think. And the first one, I think, happened when I was around 18. I had just finished secondary school, and I had been accepted into Oxford University to read something. But I decided, I've been studying in secondary school for so long, and I just need a break.
Right. So I imagine you were working very, very hard if you got an entrance into Oxford. You must have been like, really?
I think I was a good student, and I spent a lot of time worrying about school, because I think at that age, and when you're in the Hong Kong education system, they have a very narrowly defined idea of success, right?
True.
So they're like, okay, and I think the exams are intense, and in that sense, my life was quite boxed in. I was worrying about stuff, right? But one thing that I did go to was a secondary school called United World College. And that was an eye-opening, because it was full of very smart people, but they were from different countries. Half of them were directly from like Zimbabwe. My roommate was from Venezuela. It's a boarding situation. So that opened my eyes. And they had something called an experience week, where you go to do service somewhere. And I went to this remote village in China, in northern Guangdong, and very rural place. At that time, we had no mobile phones, and to call home, I had to go down to the post office, walk like half an hour to the post office to actually have a line to call home at expensive prices, right? So there's very rural village, very simple, the toilet was outdoors to have a shower. You had to, use firewood to heat a big pot of water.
Yeah.
And so I went there to do service. I fell in love with that place. I fell in love with that place not only for its people, but also just the landscape was so beautiful. The earth was like kind of like that rich yellow orchard red color, and there were pine trees, and the rocks and the mountains were, the classical Chinese calligraphy mountains, right? The ones that go boom, boom, boom.
Like the
And I just
Guilin.
fell in love with that place. Yes, exactly. It's actually relatively close to Guilin, right? And so I decided this is where I want to spend a bit of time. I can teach something. I didn't want to mess up their curriculum because for them, the teachers get ranked and the school gets ranked on English, and not even English, math, Chinese, and science, right? That were the main subjects. So I said, I'll teach art, I'll teach music, stuff that won't mess them up. And I spent the better part of a year there. And it was such an eye-opening in that sense of really rearranging my priorities. But one thing I do remember, I think my rhythm slowed down because basically there was nothing to do, really. There was so much time. There was no internet, right? And I would teach maybe 2 or 3 hours a day. And then once a week, I would walk down to the post office to call my parents. And that was it. I tried farming for a little bit. I was not very successful because I let the pigs in and they ate all my carrot tops. So all my carrots turned out to be tiny, tiny carrots. But I went out into nature a lot. And there was this beautiful valley. Our school was on kind of like midway up a hill. And at the bottom of the valley, there was this huge rock. And I was fascinated by this rock. It was like almost a story high. So really, really big rock, like huge. And I wanted to climb it. Like I've grown up by the seaside. I've loved climbing trees, everything. So I wanted to climb this rock. And I spent a few days trying to figure out how to get up there safely. Right. There was kind of a tree for part of it, and then kind of grab. I love rock climbing. It's like problem solving. And so I climbed up to this rock in the basin of this huge valley. All these pine trees, they had this reforestation program. So there are all these pine trees just coming out. And it was just, wow. It's just so much sky. And I'm kind of speechless.
Yeah.
The Tao that cannot be spoken.
Yeah.
But I think the best way to describe it was I felt so small, like so much part of the fabric of the universe. And yet I felt so meaningful. Like I felt like, I think many years later when people ask me, like, do you believe in God? I would answer them, I know God. I know there is a God. I can feel the meaning in this universe. And that feeling, of course, I eventually got down from the rock and I went back. And it was one of what they call it, maybe a peak experience, a gateway experience. But that feeling remained in me, I think, as a seed. And at that point, I had not really studied anything spiritual. I had not, I hadn't even learned Tai Chi properly. Nothing really. But I think that experience moved me very much. And I really think planted a seed in me. And much, much later, when I started picking up all these other things in my 20s, I think it also gave me a sense that, I don't know, my life had been, if that makes sense, beyond all the material pursuits or my narrow definition of success.
I kind of want to, that's sort of what I want to ask you is like, once you'd gone into this sublime experience of knowing God, knowing the universe, knowing how insignificant you are and yet significant. And did you come down with different values, or did you notice yourself change after that? Do you remember?
I felt like the whole gap year was quite a life-changing experience. In a sense, it made me really question very basic things. So, here was I so worried about school and exams, blah, blah. And then, these kids, they don't even have money to go to secondary school. So I did what was obvious to me. It was like, okay, I need to set up a fund to help them. But I saw how happy they were. And it was a part of development. The village is developed now, but when I was there, everyone was poor, basically. So there was not much comparison. Everyone was happy with not very much. And I was like, oh, wow. And it screwed with my mind a little bit, because I'm like, oh, wow. Like, if a couple of my friends go to a movie, then that's the salary, that's the whole month's salary for one of their teachers. Yeah. Like, how do you reconcile this kind of weird calculation, right? So I think in that sense, it gave me a lot of joy there. And I think that sense of joy throughout the whole year, I could really feel when I got back to Hong Kong, I suddenly was in a different sense of time. And so I think I felt I had a reference point, things gradually fade. I don't know when that decision came, but I actually didn't end up going to Oxford. I went to Swarthmore College in the States, partly because I felt, there's so much I want to learn. And in the English system, they make you choose your subject very early, right? You need to major in something. And I was like, oh no, the world is too big. I'm not ready to specialize yet.
That's kind of super. I mean, that's kind of special, isn't it? Because I feel like you've given up your... Sorry?
I often wonder, like, if I had gone down that path, I'd probably end up management consulting and doing something very boring. And
it's like a choice for joy, isn't it? It's like a choice for for more freedom in a way. That's what I feel like after that year. It's like, I'm worrying about the small stuff, and it's the big stuff I need to worry about.
I really think that. And I really think it was like, okay, all the small stuff that I was worrying about, it really is not that important. And I really got that very strong sense. So I ended up going to the States. I fell in love because we had to take, some kind of physical education. I took up dance again, which I hadn't done since I was 6. And there was this Polish choreographer, and his choreography was really, really hard. Like, after the first class, I think half of the people quit because it was that hard. But and I had no real dance background, but I was so fascinated that I was like, I want to do this. This is so beautiful. I want to try it. And then I took the semester. He was a visiting professor. And then I basically followed him back to Poland to do a whole year of study with his dance theater company in Poland. So that was another fun experience.
Wow. What was, what was so complicated? I'm curious. Like, was it nuance of how you move the body, or was it just really like a combination of moves that were just almost just too much for the body?
It's kind of like a kind of magician's trick, in the sense that his dance came from Hasidic Jewish roots. So it was very much about connecting heaven and earth. This is very Tai Chi, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
Connecting heaven and earth, and the struggle. But I think what's different is the dance is about the struggle between heaven and earth. And he would use different parts of his bodies. So Tai Chi is very unified in many ways, but this was, he would separate like different body parts, and they would always have a conversation with each other. So in a way, you were splitting your consciousness into different parts. But for the audience, it's fascinating, because it's like, something happens here and then there's a echo there, and doing it was so fun because there was a kind of logic. Like, it would look amazing from the outside, but when you did it, you're like, oh, this happened. I'm on the floor and flipped up, right? But I think what was so hard in the beginning was I guess learning any kind of new dance or any kind of new movement has its own logic, it has its own laws, right? And you're trying to figure out. And he would like to put his dances in the place of not knowing. So he would always make it just a little harder and impossible for everyone to do, right? So everyone would always be playing catch up to his choreography, like all the dances. And he would like doing that, partly to keep the dancers in this psychologically unsafe, kind of like, kind of off balance, right? Which is dramatically very interesting. Yeah. So
yeah, like beginner's mind, isn't it? You stay fresh because you never actually know. That's beautiful.
Always.
Oh, I'd love to see that. You have to send me some links.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely do that. And his work was very dreamlike. I was like, oh wow, this is a language I understand. Like dance is just, his dances are like dreamscapes. And I'm like, okay, there's so many art forms, and this is one that speaks to me. Like, I think like this. I think in metaphors. I think in dreams. And so this is a language I understand. And I was like, oh, this is fun. And partly because of that, I ended up doing Tai Chi, because I came back to Hong Kong and I trained under this Polish contemporary dance system. And there was no one in Hong Kong who taught it. So it's like, you learn the cello and everyone, you're back and everyone's just playing woodwinds. And you're like,
right, yeah.
How do I keep up my cello
you learn the
skills,
cello
right?
and there isn't an orchestra. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, yes, it's just like guzhang and like the pipa, right? So you're like, So, but I definitely wanted to keep in touch with my body. And that's how I ended up going back to my Tai Chi Sifu. I had learned like a few weeks of Tai Chi when I was 9, and I had no patience at that young age to stick with. So that's how I ended up with Tai Chi. But I think in my 20s, I had a lot of experiences which were, like, I started doing hands-on healing, I started doing Tai Chi, and
wait. Was it hands-on healing and Tai Chi at the same time, or did something happen? Like, I'm curious about...
Actually, nothing happened. It was quite mundane. This is the interesting part. This is the mundane part. Like, I think when we talk about spiritual experiences, they are those amazing peak experiences. But then they're also the ones that accumulate slowly. And then it's only much later when you suddenly, like, I remember doing Tai Chi, and then, there's this bright light happening on my forehead. I was like, what the hell is this, right? And then much later, I learned, okay, this is your third eye. I'm like, oh, okay, it's my third eye. That was it, right?
Right.
So hands-on healing, I had just gotten into just because my family, my father teaches hands-on healing, and he had this community center. So I just went along, and I enjoyed the atmosphere. I was at that point teaching English in the tutoring center, very boring. But the interesting part was I started doing theater work. So my main focus in my life was at the theater, acting, directing, dancing. But every Thursday I would go and do hands-on healing, just because it was such a nice, calm atmosphere. It's just like you space out and you just connect to the person in front of you and the whole room. And it was just, I don't even know why I kept going back, but it just was so peaceful. So I was like, okay, I'll go back. And then in the evenings, they would have something called Zen Dinners. So, which has nothing really to do with Zen other than the fact that it's mindful eating.
I was going to say, Zen dinner could mean you eat nothing. Sorry.
Emptiness, right? Yeah. Empty bowl.
Yeah, there you are. Everyone's got an empty bowl.
Yes.
Sorry.
So I would cook for like 40, 50 people. So I got very good at cooking. And my Tai Chi Sifu was hosting these hands-on healing sessions. And also he's a chef. So he would teach me how to, use a knife, and how to, you have to cut along the grain of the chopping board and not against it, stuff like that. So I learned a lot of very hands-on stuff there. Right. And then, oddly enough, my second mind-blowing experience came when I gave up theater, right? At some point, I had gotten into a rut. You get relatively okay, moderately successful at a profession, you get a lot of jobs, and then you get also jobs that you, because people know you and you kind of like the people and you kind of like the topic, but it's okay. It's okay. You're floating around. And I was like, okay, I'm tired of doing projects which I only like about 50 or 60%. I want to do something that's 90% satisfying, right, for me. So I said I will not take any theater job unless it's at least 90% satisfying at the get-go. So basically they started dropping off. Right?
Oh, wow.
It's quite rare, I think. And I just stopped doing theater for a while. And oddly enough, when you stop, when you're ready to let go, you have space. When you throw the stuff out of your bowl is ready for new things to arrive, right? And it was at that point I met another teacher of mine called Daniel Mitto from the School of the Heart, who teaches heart imagery meditation. And I went to one of his workshops. It was called Awakening the Illuminated Heart. I went in with no expectation whatsoever, just because I went because my flatmate said, oh, it's a great thing, you should try it. This teacher is from abroad, it's kind of cool. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll go. Right. And that workshop had a number of opening experiences. And they were talking gobbledygook to me. Like, I had some friends who were into human design, into what we call, in Cantonese, it's called a wee wang, like the stuff that's like,
a bit woo-woo, yeah.
Yeah, woo-woo, right? Yes, the wee wang. So in the workshop, they're like, call your angel, just one of them. You have two at least, but call one of them. I'm like, what angel?
Right.
They're like, just call, the teacher's like, just call the angel. I'm like, okay, fine. Angel! Pretty much like that, right? It's like, please come!
Right.
Then you know what happened? I started crying. I felt this presence in front of me. I was like, oh my God, there's something there. I don't see anything. I'm not a particularly visual person. But I could feel this presence. And then they asked the angel to merge with you. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is like, oh. And then the funniest thing was, I was like, well, this can, when you're with a great teacher and the atmosphere is so charged and great, of course, you can have crazy experiences. So I tried it later, much later in Chiang Mai, actually, when I had some time. I was like, let me try again. It's like, at that point, I was like, okay, let me call Raphael, angel of healing. Raphael, come. And I started crying again.
Wow.
So I was at that point, I was like, okay, there are angels in my life, right? But actually, that isn't the experience I want to talk about.
I think that, because you'd really developed your body feeling, that you were able to feel it, like this whole pathway of developing like a nuanced sense of body, then you really feel space. Do you know what I mean? And then when it arrived, you're like, oh, wow, it's totally there. Yeah. Whereas some people, like, they really don't develop that aspect of themselves at all. And then they can't feel it. But they develop something else. But that's beautiful.
Because I teach heart imagery, many people think imagery is a visualization. And then many people have ideas of what it means to see something inside.
Right.
And some people are really visual and they get lots of visuals, colors, like vivid detail. And then other people, about half of people at least, are kinesthetic or have another developed inner sense. So it's actually quite important to recognize which is your dominant sense, and not compare yourself to the person next to you.
Exactly.
Because your doorway will be different, right? And I think a lot of people also have the expectation that their inner world will look like what it's like on the outside. And it's not, because our human senses actually are very small range. Like dogs can hear pitches much higher than us. Bees can see infrared. Like, so when we think of using our own sensory system in our physical body to contact this mysterious world, we often limit ourselves by ideas of what it should be like, right? And I think that makes people not open when in meditation, whatever. And so when I teach meditation, I'm like, okay, just whatever you feel is good, whatever you see is good, and you will find your own unique doorway. And the interesting thing is all your other senses will start developing. So I started, I didn't have any visuals at all. And then I as I'm consistently meditated, I started, being able to tap into different visual senses. And I'm like, oh, okay, there's not just one visual sense, actually. There are a number of different visual modes. There's when you close your eyes, sometimes, you get the green or purple light, right? So there's that which you can actually see. And then there's kind of like the holographic one. And then there's just so many, right? And you're like, oh, wow, actually there are so many. But if you can dream.
So when did you start to realize that there's so many different senses? Like, that must have been, didn't that shake your world? Like, oh, wait a minute, the world is not what I think it is. Or are you kind of like enough in the flow? Because I think I would have been, oh, what? In fact, I think I was. That was my experience. I was like, oh, better not tell anybody. I feel a bit nuts. Yeah.
It's funny because the development of these senses happened over a gradual period of time. So it's like, okay, I have a light here, but I don't have any reference point, so I'm just gonna let it go. Right?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I've got a lot.
Yeah, whatever, right?
Feel like a Dalek.
It's like, okay, well, like I wasn't freaked out. It was just like, okay, well, it happens.
Right.
And I think because I was in the theater, I was used to quite extreme experiences. Right. Sometimes, your body is in an extreme state, your emotions are in extreme state, and you get stuff. And so, or you feel the energy flow between different actors and so on, or the audience. So having weird experience, I think I have a capacity for weird experiences.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that because when I was a kid, I did amateur dramatics, and I think actors, one of their biggest assets is a sense of self, a very stable sense of self, because they use the self. That is, they portray another self. Yeah. So they need to be able to return to the stable sense of self. So I'm guessing, okay, that you had a really stable sense of self. You like, it's okay. Okay. This is another part of me. That's fine. No problem. Not, oh, wow. This destabilizes me. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Just an idea.
Yeah, I think in that sense, it's kind of interesting to be an actor because you have this fluidity and overlapping with you and your character. And then sometimes the character feels very real, and you identify parts of the characters, and sometimes it takes a while to shake it off or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree what you mean. And I think it's also very helpful because I think I fell in love with drama partly because it allowed me in a very safe way to explore different aspects of myself. Like when I was a secondary school kid, there was this unit called Running Away from Home. And I loved that unit because, in real life, if you run away from home, there are consequences, right? But in this very make-believe place, I could explore all this. And and come out of it and still have in my real life parents would not know anything about it, and I would resolve psychologically whatever I needed to express, right? So I think my love for drama is really a chasing, an addiction in some ways to all these experiences. You can kill someone, you can have affairs, you can whatever, right? And you can explore the whole range and still be socially acceptable and not psychopathic.
Right. So true. A drama like body, like physical healers, hands-on healers. We're taboo breakers because we're not in normal society. We're not supposed to touch people wherever.
Right.
Yeah. And just touching somebody, if you when you met somebody, you very quickly touch them. It's already a big red light. And in the same way, to be somebody else, to pretend to be somebody else is absolutely a taboo. But actors are taboo breakers. That is their job to be somebody else. That is their job to break. It's like art, well, it is art, obviously. And of course, art is the portal to spirit anyway. So Yeah, sorry,
But you know what's
they
very
come out.
interesting?
I think I threw it sort of spontaneously bubbled out. But I think when I'm talking to
No,
you,
it's
things are going to
beautiful.
spontaneously bubble out because she's just
Of
like,
course, I mean that's the purpose of a dialogue, right?
oh,
But
I hope
I want to
so.
tell you, uh, I took on this role, which was a woman with multiple personalities. So I did a lot of research about these people with multiple personalities.
Hmm.
And what's very interesting, I think for you, us as healers, is that I discover that when someone has a total belief, you know, you're one personality, it can actually have there are physical changes. Like one personality can have diabetes and need, you know, insulin. And then another personality will have, I don't know, allergies, for example. And then, you know, just through a switch in the brain, it could you could just have totally different physical ailments or and habits and beliefs and whatever, or skills, even languages. And I think that blew my mind in a sense. I'm like, oh wow, we are much more fluid than we think,
Well,
right?
so
It comes down to a
I'm sorry, I'm all excited. So it
you're
sounds
excited, right?
like, yeah, it sounds like when you think of multiple personality, because you and I, we've
Mm,
both experienced, which not everybody has, we've experienced consciousness
mm,
outside the body. So a
right.
consciousness outside the body,
Mm,
which is not embodied. So of
right.
course, you know, you're a consciousness with a body outside the body, my body.
Mm,
But
right.
so you will have experienced that, and then we've also experienced probably at some point another consciousness coming inside the body and going, wait a minute, what's going on? Yeah. Um, and of course, we have people that channel that they actually
Right.
actively, or
Yes.
mediums are actively
Yes.
doing this. But
Yes.
yeah, so I'm thinking, I was sort of curious. So, did you have the multiple personality role after you'd had the heart imagery, angel
Okay. So,
experience, or because that would make sense. I could see like, or but it kind
right.
of makes sense both ways because you're starting to see
Mm,
a multiple
mm,
dimension to consciousness,
right.
as in like lots of
Yeah.
consciousnesses.
I think. Hmm. I think I have a relatively stable sense of self, as you say, because I think you would go crazy if you didn't.
I think
Um,
you do. I really do.
yeah. Um, and but a certain openness to experience. My experiences, I've taken ayahuasca, you know, plant medicine. I've had meditations where, and actually, I don't think the out of body experience is as weird as people say, in the sense that I think very often when people come back from dreams, sometimes you feel yourself settling more and more in your body, right?
Mm.
And so when we wake up, sometimes there's a sense of like, where am I? Oh yeah, and the personality coming back.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually less. It's more common than it sounds very strange to have, you know. And sometimes when you have a very sudden experience jumping out, then it's scary, right? But I actually think it's very familiar to us as human beings.
Yes.
And so,
I mean, I'd agree. I mean, you know,
yeah.
my psychology thesis,
Mm,
as you know, when I studied psychology, was about we haven't properly defined the self. Like we have so much
mm,
evidence that the self is actually way different. In that you can do the
mm,
rubber hand experiment, which is so,
mm.
somebody puts a
Oh
rubber
yeah,
hand
I
in
know
front
that
of
one.
you, hides your hand, but
Stabs it, right?
and then they through a little bit of sleight of brain, it's not really sleight of hand, they
Yeah,
stroke the rubber hand and stroke your the hand you can't
yeah,
see at the same
yeah,
time,
yeah. And
and
you,
and then you get the feeling that it's actually
yes,
it's your hand, and they did this in virtual
right,
reality and put you across the other
right.
side of the room.
Oh wow,
And I said, well, you know, that's not possible if the self is so, uh, you know, I say incarnate. The
right.
self is also,
Yes,
and there's lots of evidence that the self is a multiple, or is
right.
outside the body, or that there's a collective self. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Again, going back to the fact that we define self by
Mm,
senses, and we don't
yes.
even know much about senses or consciousness. So it's like, yeah, I think we need to
No.
go back and
Yes.
redefine the self. There you are. So you've got a stable self. I think
Yes.
you should be doing this, Hofan, as well.
But,
You can join.
yeah, but I think what's interesting about heart imagery was, okay, two things about heart imagery. First was, there are a lot of visualization techniques, and I think images is a very strong language to work with your subconscious, to work with parts of yourself. Like, for example, all our memories are encoded in images, like sensory images. You know, when we think about the future, we have visions, we have ideas that are encoded in images. So our sense of self is very entwined with the idea of image. And there are actually a lot of systems out there, like neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis uses it, or even like performance, like for athletes, you know, they use visualization to enhance their performance. So there are a lot of ways in which images are very useful, you can say, in helping us, you know, improve our lives. But what's very interesting about heart imagery is that the first thing you do in heart imagery is to go into the heart, and that is a very consistent and stable way to touch on that sense of unified consciousness, right? Which was, I was like, oh wow, this is home, which is similar to, but not exactly like that very first experience I had on that rock. But that sense of like, wow, you're part of spirit, that sense of spirit. And what was amazing, first of all, I connected to Mother Earth, this Mother Earth meditation. I was like, oh my God, there's so much love from Mother Earth. But I think what really attracted me also much later in heart imagery is that I have a technique, a consistent practice where I can find my way back there. So it's one thing to have a peak experience, you know, like, wow, great, right? But there's another thing to find, and you're very lucky if you can find that practice where, okay, I know how to get back. Like Hansel and Gretel, I can follow the stones and go back home, right?
Well, it's like a science of consciousness. If it's something you can repeat, you know, for yourself,
right?
You know, then, and you've got a certain amount of reliability in it, then that's brilliant. That's fantastic.
That's brilliant. And you start to be able to control your experience. So even I took some plant medicine. Partly, you know how I ended up there? It's kind of interesting. I ended up in Peru to take plant medicine, partly because I was enamored by the idea of staying in a rainforest for 10 days, you know, in a small hut by yourself, right? And I was like, oh, this is so cool, the Amazon, right? And I went to the Amazon. It was so funny because I think Hong Kong, in terms of longitude and latitude, our distance from the equator is actually quite similar to the Amazon. So I was like, hey, I know this tree. I've seen it in Hong Kong. It's much bigger, right? So I'm like, yo.
Home from home.
Across the world. From home to see a familiar tree, right? We were not in a very deep part of the Amazon. So, you know, in primary school, when they teach you about rainforest, they're like, it's very dark and very, I'm like, wow. But anyway, it was 10 days. We took five ceremonies of ayahuasca. And it was very, very interesting too, because what had just happened was, because I was flying all the way across the other side of the world, I said, that's a huge carbon footprint, right? So I can't just go there for, you know, a week. I need to make a meal out of this. So I think I spent 2 months. I went to the States. My aunt there, let's see what happened. I went to the States, and then I went to Peru, and then I traveled around Peru, and then I ended up in the rainforest, and then I tacked on some other parts after that too. But yeah, what was very interesting was, as I was flying to Peru, my aunt, I was in Machu Picchu, and I joined this hike, which is like 5 days you hike to Machu Picchu. So I was in the mountains doing this crazy hike, and I was cut off from civilization. And when I came down ended up at Machu Picchu, I'd heard that my aunt had gotten cancer. I was like, oh no, this is terrible. This is an aunt I love very much, because I was in the theater so much. I would often stay at their house because I was rehearsing so late, and my house is like in the suburbs, like way out. And my grandma lived in that house, and I would sleep with my grandma on the same bed. So this was an aunt that was like a second mother to me. And I had learned she got cancer. I was like, oh no. And so they asked you to go into the ayahuasca ceremony with some intentions. And I was like, at that point, I was like, should I even go? Should I fly back? And my family was like, no, don't fly back. It's not helpful. Like at this point, we don't know yet. So just go on your trip. So one of the questions I asked was, what does healing mean in my life? Like, what does it mean? So that was my intention going into the ceremonies. And in the ceremonies, I don't know if you've ever taken plant medicine, but it was so many experiences because we had 5 nights, right? But one of the things I touched was that unified field. And it was very interesting because I got visuals this time for what I'd been sensing in hands-on healing. I was like, oh, wow, this is what it looks like. But also, I experienced what it feels like to have your physical form dissolve, or the sensation of myself, Hofan, as a form dissolve, and the attachment I felt to the form, and the pain. You're like, no, I don't want myself to disappear, right? And also the experience of what it means to have my loved ones dissolve, right? At that point, I was dating a much older man, so there was, a great possibility he would leave before me. So I was like, okay, and I experienced, what it would mean to have that form dissolve as well. And I really got a very strong sense that, I got a sense that Mother Ayahuasca was basically telling me to understand healing, you need to understand death and the transience of this self, this state. And I think since that experience, I've become a much more light, I think. I think many of us who are called to healers, we've experienced some kind of pain or trauma very often, or difficulty in life. That's how we end up on a spiritual search for many of us. And for many of us, this turns into a great desire to help others in similar states, right? But I think from that experience, I could let go a lot more, because I could really feel that, we all have to die. And there is a time and place for everything. And it's not our, as healers, we have to learn when to step back and when to, respect the choices of a particular personality to take a certain path, right? Of course, we want them to stay with us. Of course, we want them to heal, get better, be healthy. But in the end, health is it's a very complex network of, our belief systems, our emotional, our ancestral, our communal self, that is messing up the system. So on some ways, there is some point where, as a healer, you just have to surrender to, okay, this is what's going to happen. And I need to respect that. It's not my job in this sense, in particular cases, to interfere or not interfere, right? So, yeah, I think that experience taught me a lot about keeping things, letting things be. So I think in that sense, I'm quite Taoist, in the sense I've become much more comfortable at not intervening and just trusting in the process. And I think this trust has to do with these experiences where I feel the universe, the benevolence, the compassion, the joy, the bliss, the whatever of the universe, that love, that resonance of love. And
That's
from
beautiful.
this very safe place, on
how
the spiritual plane, we're already perfect.
Yes. Mike, we have to, I want to invite you back, because I just think it's so, I think we've got more things to chat about. But
I'm sure that's enough to keep people going.
I think that's enough to keep people going. But I have a question which I love to ask. Is like, what advice do you give to somebody who's, looking to try and understand these things, or having these experiences and wants to put them in some sort of context, or they need some sort of guidance or support, or do you have any advice?
I would say learn to train your intuition as to what's. I think we all have a type of inner guidance, right? I think very often people want answers, like capital A answers. I want to understand the meaning of my life. I want to know what I was put on earth to do, right? And I felt, for me, it's, some people know they're born with a talent, and I'm my violin, and I'm this is my talent and my service to the world. But for many seekers, the answer is not as obvious, right? Sometimes your higher self will fake you. They will take you in one way, and then it's a roller coaster. But I think what's important is, I think we have an internal GPS that will tell you, okay, go 5 steps this way, and then you go there. And I think it's really trusting that internal GPS. And I think it's very important for people to develop a sense of like what it means to listen to that inner voice, and to be able to distinguish the fake inner voice from the ego, and the actual inner calling, right?
Right.
So I feel like if you're able to develop the sense, then I don't know, you automatically attract the right teachers, you will meet the right people, everything will fall into place, right? So it's a matter of listening, learning how to listen to yourself. And I think one tip I would say is, for me, when that inner voice is quite peaceful and quiet often. Like if I have a very strong urge to do something, I usually have to, calm down, take a night's sleep. My ego is quite emotional, and I know it's not good for me to make strong decisions in that state. But if it is true, it will stay true, and my higher self, my inner voice, will keep reminding me, right? You can leave it for a day. Don't feel like you only have one opportunity. Like, let's say you have to make a big decision. Don't worry. If you mess up this decision, if it's true for you, it will keep cropping up in your life. Another opportunity come, and another opportunity. So I would be not afraid, and just like develop that sense. That's what beautiful. I would say.
Yeah. That's amazing. I think, I can just, you know what they say, it's like, it's a perfect answer. Of course, you can say anything to it. I can talk so much about it. I'm moved. I think that's the nice thing about being with you today and talking with you, is I'm moved by your story, and I hope that I hope people are moved, and people can connect with you through your website, which I'll share. Can you just give us the domain, what it's called?
Yes, it's called wildheartrose.com. So just email me at info@wildheartrose.com.
Yeah. Internationally, because I got listeners all over the world, they could just email you and have
write an email to me, yes, and I'll be there. Or send me a message through Facebook. Richard will put the link there, and just say hi, and come find me. I do teach heart imagery, Tai Chi, and hands-on review in Hong Kong, so you're very welcome to come. And but connect to me. Ask me anything.
I'm coming over when I'm in Hong Kong. I'm coming over. I'm going to come and see you. And if you come to Thailand, you must let me know.
Yes, I will do. Yeah, this is from Thailand, actually. I'm from Chiang Mai.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Yes.
So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. And thank you for doing this. I'm sure it helps lots of people.